Welcome to Richplanet TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. Today I have returned to talk to the co-author of the groundbreaking, critically acclaimed multi-volume series covering British UFO sightings since 1940. Volumes 5, 6 and 7 have recently been released, which cover 1972 to 1979. Here to talk about Haunted Skies is John Hanson. Welcome, John.
Welcome. Thank you very much, Richard, for allowing me the opportunity to talk about the books again.
Okay, now just the last book that I mentioned there, Volume 7, you've actually published that yourself. Just tell us about that.
We decided to branch out on our own. Sadly, of course, it meant terminating our association with Mr. John Downes, but for which I'm extremely sorry for, because we think the world of him and Karina. And as I said before, unfortunately, we could not afford to keep paying out. So I've set myself up as Haunted Skies Publishing, okay. And effectively, I am now in control of these
right.
books.
So from Volume 7 onwards, and there's going to be quite a few volumes to take us up to the present day.
Unfortunately, yes.
The number of volumes keeps growing.
Yeah, I just hope that I can live to that particular length of time to finish these damn things.
Because the project keeps growing, the more you're involved with it.
As one makes various inquiries about UFO reports from the 1970s and 80s, there are always people that will telephone you and tell you about reports. I mentioned to you before about the letter in the National Association of Retired Police Officer magazine. It took me some time to get that in there, but appealing for any information, and we had quite a very good response from
this is a recent venture.
Superintendents downwards, who told us about sightings in the late 1970s and the 1980s, and further on.
Now, you mentioned police officers, and you are an ex-police officer and ex-CID officer, so you investigate these cases through a police officer's eyes.
Well, I investigate them with a large dollop of common sense, and as we've discussed before, at the end of the day, you've got to make your own judgment on people. So far, fairly all of the witnesses that I've spoken to and interviewed seem, a lot of them are very professional, they're sane, they're rational, and all they want to do, because a lot of them are very passionate about these sightings, they just want to tell you what they've seen and make of it what you will.
And you're cataloguing that very comprehensively.
I am, because I think it needs to be catalogued, because it is part of a very important British social history, and really it is not about me, it's not about Dawn, but it's about the people. These things shouldn't be forgotten.
And just to mention, John, typically I've got Volume 5 here, which is 1972 to 1974, and you're talking a few hundred separate UFO sightings in each volume. So you're talking thousands of cases, or it will be thousands of cases across the whole series.
Well, that's the frightening part about it. It's that contrary to recently expressed public opinion that UFOs once again are as dead as a duck in the water, nothing, of course, could be more from that.
Yeah, and obviously some cases are evidentially strong, others not so.
Well, that's right.
But we were discussing off camera that John's sort of objectives, if you like, are different to mine. John's trying to catalogue as many cases as he can, both the strong evidential cases and the weaker ones, whereas I'm really interested in sort of the strongest evidence, if you like.
We both have the same goal, but perhaps different objectives, and I understand what you're saying, and although we didn't come to fisticuffs, I understood what you were saying, and you're quite right, of course. evidentially, single witness sightings aren't always the strongest. Multi-witness sightings are the best. Of course, Alan Hynek himself said that years ago. But at the end of the day, you are left with a lot of single witness sightings, and a lot of these sightings, they're not embellished. They're straightforward accounts of pretty strange things seen in the sky, and you have to form your own judgment on these people. But,
because what happened was I wanted to cover 2 cases from each of the latest 3 volumes, and we were sort of disagreeing on which cases we were going to choose. I think you were probably wanting to choose the more colourful cases, shall we say, whereas I wanted to choose the multiple witness cases with just more plausible evidence. That's what I was looking at.
I know.
So we've kind of come to a compromise on what we're going to talk about.
That's right.
All right, well, let's start off with a case in 1973 in Kent, UFO over Kent. Kent resident Peter Hildebrand and his friend John were fishing on the beach at Grain in Kent on the 24th of November 1973 around midnight. Peter's friend brought his companion's attention to what he thought was a fishing boat out at sea, about a mile away, showing very bright light. So can you take it from there, John?
Okay, well, these guys were on the beach and they were out fishing, and they saw a light in the sea, which they first took to be a fishing vessel. And then it advanced towards them, came up onto the beach and over the portable light they'd got, enabling them to see a classic saucer-shaped object. The object hovered over the portable light they'd got, and it was clear that this wasn't a light, it was a saucer-shaped object, which then moved off towards the direction of Sheerness, and they lost sight of it. That always reminds me of a similar case at Sizewell, some years before, where a similar sort of thing happened. The guy was out with his dog, and this thing came out of the sea, hovered above them.
Was there any sudden movements with this craft, or was it just moving slowly?
No, it was moving slowly, as in fact most of these objects are. Again, a man contacted me about a similar incident when he was a young man out with his father in Ireland, and he said this thing was next to the bush, saucer-shaped object next to the bush, 4 or 5 feet off the ground, and it was making this ticking sound, tick, 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 ticking sound, as if it was some sort of creature or something. And then it moved slowly away, and his father confirmed that was what they'd seen.
Do you think the disc and saucer type sighting has diminished since the 1970s, and we're getting more triangle objects now, would you say? Or not?
Not necessarily, because sometimes the saucer-shaped object can quickly take on the shape of a triangular-shaped object.
Right.
I do have reports of that. Bell-shaped object. We have a lot of bell-shaped objects seen in the Essex area. Certainly there was an upsurge of triangular UFO activity, and I really do detest that word, because it's triangular, except it's triangular in shape, but sometimes it's triangular lights which are set at equilateral distance from each other, and many people will refer to them as triangular. But then if you go back into UFO history, you'll see that a lot of people have described seeing 3 lights, as indeed Colonel Holt did at Rendlesham, 3 lights in the sky. And so this common denominator of 3 puzzles me.
All right.
But then there's other cases where the black triangular object moves over almost a shadow without any lights. Sometimes it has lights in each corner, and sometimes those lights will go out, and a lot of people will think that it's gone, but it is actually still there. So, but it's rich and varied, isn't it?
Let's look at another case from Haunted Skies Volume 5, and this time not specifically really a UFO encounter, just sort of high bizarreness, if you like. Close Encounters at RAF Alconbury. Just tell us about Alconbury and the strange things that have been witnessed there.
Right, well Alconbury, we had a number of airmen contacts us one way or the other over the years, and who'd served at Alconbury, and some of them had what you might call paranormal experiences. I think on one occasion somebody was doing some repair work inside an aircraft, and he saw what others believed was a humanoid, a hairy humanoid walking along the runway. This guy was really frightened. He was very traumatized by it, but eventually he told his colleagues about it, and other reports came from retired servicemen who'd been there, and actually there was an intruder alert, and they'd confronted this being,
this hairy humanoid.
Again, hairy humanoids. You know, your first impression is, oh, this is funny. Hairy humanoids. You know, shades of Dracula and werewolves. They can't exist, can they? But you know, it's amazing how many people have seen them, and they don't find it funny. They find it terrifying. Well, these guys saw this
hairy humanoid.
Yeah, inside the airbase, and they set the dogs on it, and the dogs were so terrified they peed in fright.
So you've got witness statements from these soldiers?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Well, ex United States Air Force personnel, or security police. And they discharged their, one of them discharged a pistol at it. And I don't know if he was a good shot or bad shot or what, but this thing then just galloped over the fence, and away it went into the nearby Monk's Wood.
Right.
Well, Monk's Wood is an area where we carried out some investigation there, and there'd been several strange things seen there, including monks.
Right.
Oddly,
right.
But well, not oddly, but Monk's Wood is I have no idea, you know, why you can associate one phenomenon with the other, but I'm quite satisfied.
Now tell us about this chap at Alconbury who was in the observation tower, and he heard children's voices.
That's right. They were quite frightened because these guys were in the observation tower on the high tower on the perimeter fence, and you know, they were there on night shift, and on one or two occasions they heard the sound of children talking and laughing very loud, but it did certainly unnerve them. Because
just interrupted there, John. Is there any nurseries or schools anywhere near there?
No. This is a
middle of the night
military camp. Yeah, I mean, there's no kids at 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was.
Right.
And this didn't unnerve one. And the one man told us he wondered if it was to do with it was rumoured that some children had been died in a train crash, because there's a train line not too far away. Well, we managed to track down the actual report which had occurred in, I think it was 1898, when the Flying Scotsman was en route from past. Well, it wasn't a base then, was it? But was en route, and it broke down, and then another train hit it. And then another train hit it. Now, I can't be 100% sure on what hit who, but it's all in the book. But sadly, 6 children died, and it's quite chilling to read in that Victorian journle.
So this was in close proximity to where this tower was?
It was very close, yeah.
Right.
When I say very close, half a mile or something.
If we just consider that evidence, assuming it's correct, assuming those children did die horrifically and that person has heard this, what people immediately jump to, John, right, with that is, oh, well, they were obviously ghosts, right? That's what people assume.
Well, we can't say that, can we? I mean, you and I know that you can't say that, but if you couldn't leave that out, you couldn't leave that evidence out.
Let me just explain why I think people get the cart before the horse on what people think might be ghosts, right? I don't think modern biology has worked out how long-term human memory functions. There's nowhere in the brain where they can pin down where a long-term memory is held. Therefore, if you look at the work of Rupert Sheldrake and people like that, they claim that the long-term memory is held outside of the mind. So if those children are having a horrific experience, they will have a memory of that immediately before they've died, and perhaps that memory is a very intense memory. So if that memory is not held in their grey matter and it's somewhere resonating in space, perhaps it's possible for someone to tune in to either a memory or something which people refer to the Akashic record. And I think that we have to first understand really the true function of human memory before we start saying, that was a ghostly activity. Do you see what I mean? That's where I come from on ghosts.
I agree with you, but I'm qualifying, if you like, the investigation by saying that is what we found out. In Monkswood, there's some sort of government establishment. I think they cultivate plants or something. Nothing high powered, but we spoke to the security guard there, and he told us that people had seen shapes and monks walking through the building. And I'm not saying there may be no connection at all, but
just one other point about that, John, that about when people generally describe what they term as poltergeist type activity, generally if there's been a death, it's always, you generally find that it's someone who's died in a traumatic way. So that, for me, that might produce a more resonant memory for someone to then tune into in the future. I'm just hypothesizing here. I'm not saying that I'm right. What I'm saying is I don't think people who immediately say that's a ghost, they consider the evidence properly.
As I say, you can't do that, can you? But a lot of people will do that. They'll think there's a connection. Well, I'm not saying there is a connection. I'm just saying that the evidence is that the guys who said they heard children's voices, and as you said, there was no. We've agreed there was no nurseries, there was no schools nearby. As far as I know, there was no children died in circumstances or suspicious circumstances or whatever. We take that out of the plot, but what we do know is that there was a train crash and that 6 children and some adults lost their lives, and so who knows? You know, I mean, but some people will say, well, we'll add it up, and 2 and 2 comes to 5, and they're happy. But I don't know.
All right, John. Well, we'll talk more after this.